Hey there, this is Natalie, and since some of you drew my attention to it and made me suffer through it, I'm here to talk about the Vaush ReZero rant. It's been over a year since the Noralities response I did, and I don't think Vaush's clip of a rant from a live stream really warrants that type of essay type thing. And yes, you could take that as meaning I respect Noralities more than Vaush if you wanted to. Still, I'm going to steal Necro13's format here and play the video and give my response. It's not crazily long, and a lot of it I can just skip since it's just the same pasty man shouting the same things at a Twitch audience who for some mad reason seem to want him to give more of his completely novel views about Donald Trump instead of talking about anime in the first place. Now, I am going to be being a bit harsher than usual in this one, because he's a well-known internet personality and no stranger to controversy, so it's not really the same as with the average AniTuber or random Twitter user that I've talked about in my other occasional commentary videos. I don't think me taking the piss in a few places will do him any harm, so I might as well be a bit sassier and make it a bit more cathartic for those of us who are fans of ReZero. I will admit I don't really like him in general, but I don't watch a lot of American left-wing political content, what with not being American and being more of a centrist, so I've really only seen his occasional takes on media and stuff, and a clip where he tried to say possession of CP should be legal because of blood diamonds or something. I don't really like the way he comes across, but what's more important in terms of this rant is that I don't really think he has any analytical skills whatsoever when it comes to media, or even any general media comprehension skills, if I'm being honest. But obviously, this isn't his usual niche, and based on the comments on his video, it seems like even his fans think his takes on anime and media in general are typically awful. So let's have some fun arguing with it, but definitely don't harass him or any of that malarkey. So let's roll.
ReZero, the show is about self-love and why neat/otaku culture is damaging. How much of the show have you seen? I've seen up until the big whale or whatever. Gluttony. Dude, I'm really sorry. ReZero is fucking garbage, dude. Guys, I'm really sorry, dude. I can't go into it, okay? But having your fucking otaku pro tag be like, we're being critical of otaku culture, but we're gonna have a pro tag who interacts with women in the most cringy, degenerate, creepy way imaginable to be.
So he's seen up to the whale, so somewhere around season 1, episode 19 or 20. Remember that, because he does somehow magically have some things to say about season 2 later. But we learn here that the starting point for the rant was someone in the chat bringing up Mother's Basement's video about ReZero, in which he kind of framed it as being a wake-up call for incels. I personally always thought Mother's Basement was projecting a bit when he saw it that way to begin with. I mean, he does actually talk about the personal ways he related to early Subaru in that video, so I think his analysis is pretty coloured by that. My own view of the series is that I don't think ReZero aims to criticise otaku culture through Subaru, so much as to show someone at an awkward stage in growing up and developing socially and personally. Because of Return by Death, he's forced into desperate situations where he has no choice but to keep pushing forward, no matter how low the chances of success seem, and he has to confront a lot of the things holding him back in order to become the person he needs to be, to save those he cares about, to unravel the mysteries around him, and to have the interpersonal relationships he wants and needs. That may sound similar to the cautionary tale for incels interpretation, but I think Tappei writes it in a way that's a lot more sympathetic to the type of person Subaru is at the start, really saying he is someone who will act stupidly, who doesn't really know how to act around girls he likes or how to come across the way he wants to yet, and that will have bad consequences, but he isn't a bad person or hopeless. He's a believable character at the start of a long story with a lot of room to grow. As a result, of course it's not just people constantly punishing Subaru for what an idiot he is. Some people are kind to him, some people are wary of him, others reject him or mistrust him at first, but begin to like him as he begins to exhibit more likeable behaviours. The way they act towards him is the product of their own personalities, just as someone like him would be treated differently by different people in real life. Some people are kind, some are judgmental, some are guarded, some are mean, and that's the way it is with the cast. But considering Subaru doesn't ever do anything really heinous that would lead to him being universally shunned, but instead just exhibits some pridefulness and really bad social skills, I'm not sure why you'd expect every other character to hate him anyway. I mean, think about Shield Hero. There, everyone at first thinks Naofumi raped a princess, and even then there are still some rare people who are willing to help him and believe him. Of course, Subaru, who really just committed a social faux pas, still had some people who were sympathetic towards him, especially given his actions had the immediate punishment of him being publicly beaten in a duel, so many people would probably think he'd been sufficiently taught a lesson anyway. But then, Vaush said Subaru treated women in the worst way imaginable, so maybe to him, embarrassing Emilia and acting like a bit of a nice guy is worse than what Naofumi was accused of. I honestly don't know how he really ranks these things. But my point is, Subaru isn't there, as Vaush seems to think he should be, to say, look at what a twat someone like him would look if they were actually isekai'd, as some kind of harsh wake-up call to people who may suspect they act like him. It's more about someone recovering from an immature state of mind than a criticism of them being like that in the first place. So say instead of being a bit cringe, Subaru was an alcoholic, and throughout the story he developed and recovered from his alcohol addiction and came to terms with the root causes behind it, gaining the help and support of the people around him because he was trying so hard. That would be different from the series being about what idiots people who become alcoholics are, and how if you are one, you should just stop it. It's a character developing. You know, that thing that's supposed to happen in most genres of fiction. And it's that enables people who don't have anything in common with early Subaru at all, like me, to empathise with him and find his story interesting. But I personally don't watch or read stories to be given role models or life lessons, or even that much for the feels. I watch them for interesting mysteries to theorise about, and surprising twists, and creative and interesting ideas. And ReZero has a lot of that stuff, which is the reason why I like it so much myself. But Vaush didn't seem to notice any of that. He was too distracted by how much he didn't like all the pretty girls. Honestly, he didn't. He's above that, and you better not forget it.
A fucking proxy for the audience so they can imagine they're laying their head on the lap of a girl who looks like she's 12 years old, and then having Rem or Ren, I forget which one, having Rem be like deeply in love with the protag, even though the protag is a worthless piece of shit who can't do anything. Rem just wildly falls in love with him, and then he's like, I love the other girl who I also have had no meaningful interactions with, and she's just nice to me, so I've fallen in love with her by default. And then Rem is like, that's okay, I'll just lust after you for the rest of my life. I'll just thirst after you and be the fucking third wheel, and maybe I can
Emilia canonically looks like she's 18. I mean, Vaush might think she looks like she's 12, what with having the big boobs that 12-year-olds are typically known to have, but it's actually stated that she looks about 18 in the novels. This is because her actual age is unknown, but she's at least 114, so saying how old she looks to Subaru is a relevant thing to mention. I don't think anyone really considers Emilia or Rem to have lolly-type designs, and they're supposed to look around the same age as Subaru canonically, so this is really just Vaush pandering to the side of the internet who like to go off about anime characters being literal children all the time. Oh no. Imagine people wanting to relate to the protagonist who has a love interest the same age as him, who is kind and accepts him. The absolute degeneracy. Considering the lewdest thing that happens with any of the girls in ReZero is a kiss, and that's not until season 2, which he hasn't seen, he's barking up the wrong tree if he's trying to take that angle anyway. I did cut the next bit because he was being a bit vulgar, and you know how I feel about YouTube's no-no square and the touching thereof. But I feel like I already said everything I could possibly say about the Rem thing in the Noralities response video, and his takes are basically the same, only with even more ignorance of the plot. Honestly, I know this was a live stream rather than a scripted video, and he can be forgiven for having forgotten a lot of what happened in the show, but this is more like watching someone who thinks they watched it, but is misremembering that they actually just watched the Noralities video about a year ago, while coming off of dental anaesthetic, and is basing what they think happened in it on that.
You have zero understanding of this? Wrong. You're just caught up in it. I know you ReZero fans. You're watching, he lays his head on the lap of the cute girl. You're like, that could be me. I understand. I know you.
I mean, I probably could lay my head on a cute girl's lap if I really wanted to, but it's not something I've typically been known to be interested in.
Bad anime take? No, I'm sorry, guys. It's... I wish I could live watch ReZero with you guys. Oh, God, I wish I could live watch ReZero with you guys. I'd do it on fucking D-Live. Oh, God. I have to take all the guns out of my house so I don't end it all listening to chat defend every cringy...
I don't think I'm alone in this statement, but I'd rather go water skiing in shark-infested waters with bloody chops for skis than watch the veritable bukkake of hot takes that Vaush live reacting to ReZero would be.
He learns after dying multiple times. Dude, that premise was not built upon sufficiently, okay? I'm sorry. If your main character has an ability that gives them, like, knowledge or, like, future sight, they better be smart enough to take advantage of it. Because as someone whose IQ is higher than my age, it was agonizing watching him having to die 8 times in a row to find out something that should have been contextually evident the first time he dies, okay?
So, which sin do you reckon Vaush would have in ReZero? He rants like Regulus, but I'm gonna say pride. Still, aside from asserting his intellectual superiority over a fictional teenager, what is he really saying here? That ReZero should be some kind of time travel mystery with a genius protagonist? I mean, sure, stories like that are good, but that's not the point of Return by Death. It's not a cute gimmick for looping through and solving clever puzzles, it's a source of psychological horror, and its existence raises bigger mysteries about the world, about why Subaru is in it, and what he's actually supposed to be doing there. And what is it he was supposed to have solved contextually the first time around? Knowing he was killed by Elsa doesn't help him to deduce how to get out of the situation alive, save Emilia, Felt and Rom, and get her insignia back. He doesn't have a way to do that until he meets Reinhard, which doesn't happen until the last loop of that arc anyway. So what would Vaush have done with his amazing IQ of, like, at least 35 apparently? You know, from the context. Nothing, because there wasn't a way for Subaru to solve his own murder there, because this isn't a story about Natsuki Subaru, the super moe time detective. The situations in the loops are not simple puzzles, and trial and error is needed, with Subaru having to take each loop down completely different courses to find a way to break through a dead end, meaning that even when he's repeating a period of time, completely unexpected things can happen, or he can end up in places or situations he hasn't seen before, and that's where the suspense comes from during these sequences of events. Then, on the broader story level, it sets up questions like, why does he have to do this when he has no other powers, and doesn't know why he's connected to the Witch of Envy? That's the mystery the story's getting us invested in, not who killed him in episode 1.
Why does Rem instantly idolize him even though he's accomplished nothing and is a useless sack of shit who is creepy to her and her fucking sister? Why does...
She doesn't instantly fall in love with him. You know that Rem was the one murdering him in Arc 2, right? I thought you were good at solving these things.
You know what? Her name's Zoe now. That stupid... She has no personality other than being nice. The main girl, Emilia, thank you.
Emilia's character is intentionally kept mysterious beyond being nice until season 2, when we see things from her point of view, rather than seeing her as Subaru does. But you didn't watch season 2, and of course every character in an 11 arc series should have had all of their development by the end of arc 3, or the writer just sucks.
Why does the fucking military looking lady, who then later loses her memory and any semblance of a personality, instantly go, what a fascinating young lad this, you're interesting, and all he is an otaku in a fucking jumpsuit?
Wait, Krish doesn't get amnesia until season 2. Did you lie to us, Vaush? Did you actually watch season 2? Or did you just decide your opinion of her character after the amnesia based on something really stupid, like a review in the Anime Feminist or something? Krish's change in personality is actually interesting, because Krish was someone who actively became more masculine, as she thought it would be necessary for her to be the leader of the caste and noble family. But when her memories are eaten, she of course forgets this new learned personality and reverts to what could actually be considered more her true self. It's a dramatic change that unsettles the people close to her like Felix, but she doesn't have no personality, she's just different. As for why she finds Subaru interesting in season 1, well, Crush has a divine protection that allows her to detect when people are lying, and so in the loop where he's honest with her, she helps him. He has important information about the white whale that might help her defeat it, which is something that's very important to her, and he can't tell her how he got it, but she knows he's telling the truth. So why is she not supposed to be intrigued by that? Let's be real, you just got it into your head that this is a harem show where every woman falls for the protagonist for no reason, and then completely ignored the plot. And the fact that actually the only girl who falls in love with Subaru in the episodes you saw is Rem. The others just came to either like, respect, or tolerate him. And there are perfectly good reasons in the story why they do. You also ignored the male characters, because the fact that they're all pretty interesting and important to the plot counts against your position that it's some pandering waifu show about a bunch of girls fawning over an idiot. The next bit is kind of gross. He's going on about characters slipping on their own juices, and it's less funny than that sounds, so we'll skip ahead.
He went to that fucking royal ball where they were selecting the by the way, the world building in the show is trash. But anyway, he went to the fucking royal ball and he humiliated Emilia by being her fucking knight, except he's in a fucking tracksuit. And he's like, I challenge you to a duel. And then he gets ass blasted by somebody who's capable of wielding a weapon. And then afterwards, Emilia's like, you embarrassed me, please go home. And then he doesn't. He comes back and she's like, I missed you. That's so unsatisfying. If he's gonna be a cringe lord who fucks everything up, there need to be consequences. Not him having an emotional breakdown because he had to spend 5 minutes away from his fucking waifu. Okay, I'm sorry. We got really distracted there.
Oh yes, the royal ball. It wasn't a ball, of course, but that's the least of the things wrong with his retelling. Emilia doesn't tell him to go home, she goes home, leaving Subaru behind in the capital, where he proceeds to get into the whole series of events with the whale and Petaljuice and all of the most brutal deaths he goes through in season 1, before eventually getting reunited with Emilia after he's gotten through all that, won the trust of Crush and Anastasia's factions, evacuated the people from Roswell's mansion and the nearby area, killed Petaljuice, and gotten rid of a bomb that was about to kill Emilia and some children. And then they talk, and she's ready to forgive him for embarrassing her in front of all the other people, who've now also forgiven him because he proved himself to them during the whale stuff. What part of that didn't make sense? Was she supposed to still have the arse with him, despite all the things he did, his attitude now, and the fact that Emilia is supposed to be a kind-hearted and generous person? What consequences was he supposed to face after she left to satisfy you anyway? He was brutally killed multiple times, watched the people he cared about die, got frozen to death until his head dropped off when the cute mascot character turned into an eldritch abomination, and that happened like 3 times. He got possessed by Petaljuice and had to have Julius kill him right after they thought they'd finally won. I mean, what more do you think needed to happen to him as payback for, what was it? Wearing a tracksuit and being cringe? I mean, if you can think of something horrible that hasn't already happened to Subaru, just tell Tappei. He'd probably put it in if it's savage enough. And wait, didn't Subaru make up with Emilia in the final episode of season 1? Which according to you earlier, you didn't even get to?
I will say this much, I liked Beetlejuice.
Why is he pronouncing it like that? Is that how it's actually pronounced and only big-brained intellectuals know about it? I mean, it's actually Petaljuice with a P, which is apparently intentional. There is apparently a reason why it's slightly misspelled from the star name, just as a bit of trivia there. From here on, for a few minutes, he's mostly just replying to people in the chat, talking about stuff that I don't really care about, like comparing Owl House to Gravity Falls, and then arguing with someone who thinks Attack on Titan is fascist propaganda, saying that he also used to believe Attack on Titan was fascist, but then he did some research and now he knows it isn't. I mean, props to him for not being on that nonsense bandwagon, I guess. But then he gets back onto ReZero, so there's still a bit more suffering to go.
You just lost the incel audience. All I need to know about that ReZero is shit and a harem anime, low IQ harem anime, is that all I knew about ReZero going into it, in spite of all of the attention and coverage and gossip surrounding it, was the girls. I didn't know anything about Betelgeuse. I didn't know anything about the way. I didn't know anything about the battles. I didn't know anything about the central mechanic where he comes back after he dies. All I knew about was Rem and Emilia. Rem and Emilia. Rem and Emilia. Rem.
I think Vaush got broken at this point, as he just sort of repeated that 14 times. But yeah, back in 2016, there was a lot of that going around. A lot of people came to know ReZero because of the memes and waifu wars. But does what fans of a show were memeing about 6 years ago really bear any relation to the quality of a story? The rest of the video is him with his pets.
Hey, Artemis.
Look at that. 2 cats and a pussy. The cats have a little fight, and honestly it's a lot more entertaining than watching Vaush debating someone, since they have a few more moves than his one, repeatedly shouting the same thing over the other person tactic. And that's really all I'm going to show of his video, but in closing, I do want to say why takes like this annoy me, and why I feel like making responses to people like Vaush here and Noralities in the past. See, I don't really care if people don't like an anime I like. I also don't really care if he wants to insult the fans, because his view of them is inaccurate, so he can say we're all incels with low IQs, but I know my way around the ReZero community and I know that that just isn't the case, so it's meaningless. It's like if I tried to insult Vaush by saying he's just getting by on his looks. But it annoys me when someone thinks they're making a criticism of the actual work itself without even understanding the plot. There are harem isekai stories that are supposed to be just fun. I guess what he would say, pandering. And when someone is writing something like that, they know that they're writing something like that. When their intention is to produce that kind of entertainment, they know that that's what they're producing. And that's how they manage to meet the expectations of the audience who wants that stuff. I know this to be the case 100%, since I've written harem isekai novels myself, because they're fun to work on and they sell. Criticizing something for being what the author intended it to be is meaningless. So really, you're more just criticizing people for liking it in the first place. And that's what I think he's really doing here. However, it's misplaced, because ReZero isn't, and was never intended to be, throwaway harem pulp fiction. Tappei Nagatsuki has been writing it for 10 years, and as well as the mainline novel series, he's also produced all kinds of canon side content that expands on characters, history, gives clues to the many secrets still hidden in the various plotlines. All of the stuff only a writer who's bringing their A-game to a project could actually do. And yet, rather than accept that that stuff is all there in the work, you're just not personally interested in it enough to get into it. Instead, you just wave your hand and say, "The world building in this show sucks, by the way," as if that doesn't even need to be qualified if someone as discerning as you said it. It's an ignorant and disrespectful dismissal of the work of what I think is one of the best authors in the light novel industry. If you don't like the anime, for any reason, just say you don't like the anime. But you can only criticize things like what its intentions are, who it was written to appeal to, what the character arcs or messages in the story are supposed to be, if you're basing that on a real familiarity with the work, not some assumptions you've made based on entirely different shows, your frankly ironic hatred for your creepy incel straw man, and some memes from 2016. To put it in more pretentious terms that might be more on his level, it's an affront to the very concept of critiquing media. And that's the end of my rant, but let me know what you think of all this in the comments. Thanks as always to my supporters on Patreon, and to everyone who helps me out by subscribing to my channel and watching my videos. Thank you for watching this one, and I hope to see you again very soon.